So we are here in a slightly rainy Cambridge. Why have you decided that you wanted to come today?
Well, Patrick, I'm very interested in this whole phenomenon that we've seen both in the US and here in the UK of protesters, pro-Palestinian protesters, the encampments and the militant tactics that certain protesters are taking to make their point. And we've seen in recent weeks encampments spring up at Oxford and Cambridge and other universities around the United Kingdom. Of particular relevance to me is that I was, over 20 years ago, a student here at the fantastic University of Cambridge, or just outside my old college, Queen's College. And so it's a bit of a trip down memory lane for me. You know, when I was 18, it was so exciting, daunting, and the biggest honour of my life to get into Cambridge. My parents hadn't had the privilege to go to university as 18-year-olds, and it was the biggest privilege for our family. And I remember coming here as a bit of a wide-eyed, naive young girl, and I had a wonderful experience here at Cambridge. And you know, it's a great teaching environment. It's supposed to foster discussion, exploration of ideas, respect, freedom of thought. But it feels now what we're seeing on campus here at Cambridge is a certain kind of thuggery, intimidation and harassment, whereby one group is allowed a megaphone to blast out abusive messaging and another group just has to shut up and put up.
Yeah, and what are you actually hoping for from today then? So at some point we're going to head down there and try to engage a bit with the people who have been camping out now. What in an ideal world, what happens?
Listen, I'm really genuinely interested in what these people think. I've been very vocal over the last 6 months about my views, both as Home Secretary and subsequently that the acts of October the 7th by Hamas were brutal and murderous, and that Israel has a legitimate right to defend itself, and its military action in Gaza is justified legally and actually morally. I went out to Israel last month to meet survivors of October the 7th, senior military and political figures in Israel. And my husband is Jewish, I should declare that. I have an interest in the issue personally. But I also am genuinely interested in what the other side of the debate says. And we've seen these marches, we've seen people feel very strongly about rightly, the civilian deaths in Gaza. Every civilian death, whether it's Arab or Israeli, is a tragedy. We don't want civilians to die. We've seen a lot of people feel very strongly about this conflict. And I am genuinely interested in what people who are taking to these encampments think and feel, where they get their information from, and what their justification is.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a fact-finding mission, I suppose, really,
yes.
Isn't it? And hopefully we can have some kind of dialogue and some kind of discussion with them and, you know, answer some of those questions. I mean, they're never going to have a better chance, are they, really, to, you know, see somebody like yourself. You've presented yourself here, so hopefully they do take that opportunity. Some people do feel quite intimidated by these encampments. Clearly not you.
Listen, I'm not a shrinking violet, I think you could say. I'm someone, you know, I see being elected to Parliament as a privilege. People put their trust in me to go to Parliament, and they expect a level of courage and bravery on their behalf. And I want to inquire, I want to find out, I want to question, I want to engage in a reasonable and rational and respectful way with people who might disagree with me. That's the essence of a free and democratic society. And if we can't do that in Britain, then we're in a really worrying state. Yeah,
do you worry then that there has been a certain decline maybe since the time that you were here, when we see that I've been to a few of these kind of things, and, you know, there's a bit of shouting, there's not always the biggest desire to engage. Are you worried that we've maybe lost that a bit as a society, do you think?
I do fear that. I think we get a polarisation of views, we get an entrenchment of views, and then we actually get extremism as well. You know, we've got a really big problem in this country, as I've coined it, mass extremism on our streets. We've seen through these marches, not everybody on these marches, but a large number of people engage in anti-Semitism, racism, intimidation, thuggery, harassment, and members of the Jewish community feel terrified in the UK in the 21st century, and that makes me ashamed to be British. We shouldn't be living in a country where certain groups feel scared to go out into the streets and go about their daily business.
And just before we head over there now, there is some school of thought that say that people like the police or certain university authorities should have done a bit more to move some of these people along, actually. The visible presence allows something to grow, allows something to fester, and it can make things worse. But where would you stand on that?
Listen, I agree and support the right to peaceful protest. I support people in exercising their right to do that peacefully. What I object to is when that expression crosses a line into racism, intimidation and criminal behaviour. And I think when you've got Jewish students feeling intimidated, not feeling able to express their views or express their faith, then we've got a real problem and we've got a climate of fear, and the university authorities need to step in and discipline and stop unacceptable behaviour.
Yeah, and just lastly, actually, before we move along, they make lists of demands like the universities need to divest from anything that's kind of Israel-related, really. There's talk of them doing things like interrupting graduation ceremonies and things like that as well. I mean, do you think the universities should just stand firm and not give in to the demands like this, really?
Absolutely. We can't have a minority group dictate the views of the majority, and a big institution in the United Kingdom, which is partially taxpayer funded as well. So this is universities shouldn't take political positions. They're not here to indoctrinate. They're not here to be vehicles of political campaigns. And the divestment demands and the boycotting demands are anti-Semitism, pure and simple, and in no circumstances should any public institution, any state institution, engage in that kind of activity.
You do think that there is a lot of anti-Semitism at camps like this, then, particularly?
Well, this is what I want to go and see.
Fine.
That's my observation, that there are elements of anti-Semitic behaviour. For example, chanting from the river to the sea is, to my mind, an anti-Semitic chant. It's calling for the eradication of Israel. It's calling, therefore, for the eradication of Jewish people. That's a call for genocide. That is anti-Semitic. And, a lot of people chant that unwittingly. They don't really know which river they're talking about, which sea they're talking about, or what it actually means. Some people chant it knowingly. I'm really interested to see what that's all about, what's happening here.
Well, shall we find out?
Let's go.
All right, okay, all right.
What are we? We're middle of May. I don't know if there's exams, which is also even more staggering. Shouldn't they be holed up in the library studying for their exams?
Well, I mean, yeah, exactly. They should be really, shouldn't they? Them. But I think there's some talk of graduation ceremonies coming up as well soon, which I think they are trying to disrupt.